All right. Enchiladas. Just kidding. You stumbled into some kind of show. It's not the enchilada show. I've actually started saying recently that it's an anti-podcast. It is a podcast, but we've been referring it to as a show. Like it's its own thing, doing its own thing, separate but equal, folks. It's the Binge-Watchers podcast with yours truly, Johnny Spoiler. They often say, or they tell me that I spoil movies.
They do.
But I like to say I only spoil the ones I love. So if you go back and listen to all these movie reactions and reviews, you might be able to figure out that if I'm not spoiling scenes, then my real ratings for the movies are revealed. What? Next level stuff, listeners. If you're paying, I mean, you'd have to pay a little bit of active listening attention. I don't know if it's all service level or not. But joined as always by the effervescent Jordan Savage, who's so savage he can review a movie without having seen it by the title alone, the vibe alone. Not sure. The atmosphere. She's got like their own litmus tester. I don't know. And this is Binge-Watchers podcast. We're dropping in with some. We do have some home video headlines, so stick around. We'll drop some stuff on you people, some knowledge about what's going on in the movie, TV, and worlds. But first, crack one open.
Crack open a cold box of wine or pour something cold on ice because it's the Binge-Watchers podcast.
Idea if Russian oligarchs can live in Russia because of their system of money or their beliefs about money or how their society works. I don't know. Maybe I should watch this movie called Anora that just won the Palme d'Or in France as like the best movie in the world. Sean Baker made it. He's an indie filmmaker. You might have seen he did like his first film on an iPhone of all things called Tangerine, like in 2015. But he got the top award. It's a movie about a sex worker who marries a wealthy Russian oligarch. And so I always thought like the Russians with money are not in Russia. But I don't know. I don't know if they're outside the system or who knows. Clearly, I haven't seen the best movie of the year. I have no idea what I'm talking about. Anyway, what's crazy about this is there's like a phenomenon between this like Neon Studios have won the last 5 Palme d'Ors in a row. So Parasite, Titan, or Titan. I mean, it's spelled differently from Titan, but it might be anyway. It might mean the same thing. Which is that movie's trippy. The girl has sex with a car, then gives birth to like a half car baby.
Interesting. I haven't seen any of
but
those.
But it's not
movies.
PG like the Transformers. Titan is like almost rated X. Anyway, there's Triangle of Sadness, which makes fun of everything, and it makes fun of socialism. It makes fun of communism. It makes fun of capitalism. It makes fun of all the human systems that are all broken and not working, all in the same movie. So check that out. Anatomy of the Fall, I guess, won last year. Anyway, that's a lot. They have 5 movies from the same studio win in 5 years in a row. Either someone's greasing the palms and handing out some make me win money, you know?
Yeah.
Or you know,
they're just crushing it.
Yeah, or they're just really crushing it with good movies, you know. Like you never know, never can tell. Steven Spielberg, I guess, famously helped define high concept movies, but he said, if a person can tell me the idea of a movie in 25 words or less, it's going to make a pretty good movie. I didn't know if this was actually a Steven Spielberg quote or if it got made up because I had seen this on Instagram and I was like, what's the origin story of this quote? I want to see if it's real. It was published in The Guardian in 1999. So yeah, so it was about I guess he said this and I thought about it. I was like, yeah, like the more complex a movie, if you can't get it out when you're pitching it in like 30 seconds or less or a few words. There's a similar quote to Spielberg's that another producer said, and he's basically saying that, like, if you can't tell me in 2 minutes what your movie's about, it's unproducible.
Keep it simple, right? I feel the same way about recipes, totally off topic.
KISS.
But I'm like, if it's like 4 ingredients or less, like it always tastes the best. So I feel like that this makes sense.
It's funny you say that about recipes because when you watch like cooks or chef de cuisines or these like food celebrities, and they get into like 11 ingredients, 12 ingredients, 13 ingredients, and then you go like, but then you eat it, you can only taste 4. you know what I mean? So it's hilarious. They're like, and all the work, like, going into certain things, you really got to care to do it, I guess. Let's see. Oh, I don't know if it's cons or con or can. I mean, I've heard it so many different ways. Who knows what is the appropriate way? I don't know. Like, I think in America, most people say can. Like the Cannes Film Festival.
Yeah.
Or the con. I like to say con because it reminds me of a villain from Star Trek, Wrath of Khan. Khan! We're going to go to Cannes and win the awards. Khan! George Lucas was apparently there, and there's a news media outlet in France, I guess, called Brut. He did an interview with them and said some pretty provocative things. He said, the stories they're telling are just old movies. Let's do a sequel. Let's do another version of this movie. And it's just not in movies. It's in almost everything. There's almost no original thinking.
How do you feel about that?
Lucas's quote this year. I find it pretty interesting. I feel like a lot of filmmakers that are considered the greats or the tops, and they all come out of the film school around the same time, like in the 70s and the 80s, and they're working through the early 2000s making movies, I feel like are not transitioning well into the streaming universe. And what they've known as film is not the same thing, and the industry is not the same. I mean, I've said many times on this podcast, there are things that irritate me about being an audience member of like cinema's dead and streaming is its own thing, and like it is what it is. Even for like, we have a segment on this show called staff picks. Like if we're gonna recommend something to the audience to watch that's not the movie of the week, and sometimes it's painstaking to even come up with an entry for that segment of the show because nothing's really worth talking about sometimes.
Right. Well, and it's because we watch so many things too during the week, but it's like what's really memorable out of the week that we watch.
Well, and if it's gonna make that next level, like, is it gonna be a recommendation or just something you watch? And there's no reason to bring it up or whatever. So we watched these movies called The Unnameable and The Unnameable 2. From the depths of hell, it's unnameable. It's about college students. They're going to check out this haunted house. There's a monster who's been locked up there since like the 1800s. It's called, nicknamed The Unnameable. They don't really know what its actual name is. Could be Jacqueline Smith for all we know, Esquire, but we don't really know. Esquire means she'd be an attorney. Like she'd go to court and be like, dude, some old man locked me up in his house for 200 years. Bro, where are my civil rights? The Unnameable 2, the same creature of a demonic nature, too hideous to name, once again, terrorizes the college kids that summoned it. You kind of wonder if, like, maybe it was only just really pissed off because it didn't have a name. Like, if they just gave it a name, it would chill the fuck out. You don't really know. I filled these notes with savage stats, so let's see, like, what Jordan's going to tell everybody about The Unnameable and The Unnameable 2, which, again, feels like one long movie. Like, without both movies, I don't think we'd have a whole story to talk about. Yeah.
I think you're right about that. But so for some savage stats, they are based on H.P. Lovecraft's short story of the same name, The Unnameable. So the movie was shot in 3 weeks, which I found was pretty cool. And the script was written in 7 days. What I find hilarious, though, is that the makeup for this creature actually took 9 hours. So it's almost like the makeup and like the actual, physical effects that they used for her took almost as long as it did to film or to write. Just kidding. So it took 9 hours to do the creature in the makeup. No stunt doubles were used for anyone in this film, which I thought was pretty impressive.
Yeah, that's
people's heads are getting
actors doing their own stunts and taking a chance. That's how indie this movie is. Like we're risking everything. Do we have good insurance? I don't know.
And then they used a lamb's heart
Oof.
for the scene in, I think, the very beginning, right? Where the monster
Yeah,
tears
when the
like one of
monster's keeper gets killed, she rips out his
Yes.
heart, and
Yeah.
which I guess he's referred to in the IMDb says he's the warlock. I
Yes,
mean,
they do
to
refer
me,
to him
to me,
as
it
a
seems like a Puritan society, like in New England in the 1600s, like same kind of Salem witchcraft type stuff, where there's like a few families or something, and they all know about the creature, and they're like, "Bro, Steven, lock that shit up right now." And Mark's like, "Oh fuck," like we'll just like not tell the town that it's here, and we'll check on it every once in a while,
Yeah.
you know. And then the other guy's like the authority figure from the church. He's like, hey, he's like Pastor George. He's like, yeah, guys, you do that, and we'll do this, and then and that's it. Like
Oh.
anyway.
No, they also used other animal entrails for guts in the film,
Dude,
so
that's why the stuff looks so visceral. Like this
like
is
real.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah, which is great. For part 2, Julie Strain as the creature. She's like 6 foot something, and she was one of the only people who like showed up to this interview, and she was actually really tired, which I thought was really interesting when she had showed up to do her audition.
Mhm.
She wanted to be somebody other than just this big girl or this girl with big tits who could walk through a party scene. So there's a pretty interesting story I'll touch on about that whole audition. Before we go into that, there's cameos for both John Rhys Davies. Did I say his name
Yeah, I think it's like
correctly?
John Rhys Davies or something
Yeah,
like that.
Rhys.
He's Gimli in Lord of the Rings.
Mm,
I like
we
him as the
love Gimli.
professor in this show called Sliders, which is about sliding into parallel dimensions. It's like a pretty uh popular TV show. Yeah.
And then we have David Warner as well doing a cameo in this.
We've mentioned him before on the show. He's one of the minor villains in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, Secret of the Ooze. Basically, like he's one of the scientists that helped create the ooze. Then he gets kidnapped, by the other villains to make bad mutants. But I mean, I mentioned Star Trek already. He's Chancellor Gorkin in Star Trek 6, which is a Klingon who wants to make peace with the humans. And then in Star Trek 5, he's also playing another Starfleet officer. So he was in at least 2 Star Treks. Plus, he has a history with like the Doctor Who TV shows and stuff. So anyway, he's been kicking around. Well, I mean, he's gone now, but he has like both of them have a
Pretty
giant list of
memorable.
credits. So
Yeah.
I was actually forgot that they were in part 2 because anyway, we'll get around to it. I don't want to spoil favorite bits during Savage Stats. All right, sorry to interrupt.
Smearing some segments. Talk about
Yeah,
smearing.
yeah.
They had to literally lather plaster all over Julie Strain's body
Hmm.
during the makeup effects, and she pretty much had to stand there like completely nude except for a G-string while they're like laying plaster all over her body. And she said
The
that they looked
90s
a
were
little
wild,
nervous.
yo.
I mean, it was
Like,
as I've been reading a lot of like memoirs and stuff, and to just hear some of the stories that these actresses
yeah.
were put through is like absolutely wild. This being one of them. Obviously she's subjected to like literally having plaster rubbed all over her body, but
Yeah.
she suspected that they were enjoying it. She took on the role of the creature, like I mentioned, to do something that was a little bit more outside of her comfort zone. And so when she was doing the audition, they originally the director and producer had a hard time finding someone to play the creature. They had a lot of beautiful actresses audition, but they didn't look intimidating enough or ferocious for what they were looking for the creature to play.
Yeah.
Julie Strain, she's 6'1". She showed up, of course, to her audition. She has this impressive bodybuilder physique. She's like exhausted because it was the 4th edition for her in that day, and she just assumed that they were like wanted her to strip down, so she just completely undressed and then literally just started lunging at them and acting like a wild animal to show off the ferocity that was necessary for this role. So
Dude.
it's pretty impressive in my opinion. And that's it for the Savage Stats. I can't hear you. Can you hear?
We'll be right back after these messages. What are the messages? Let's see. Doc. We all know there's things in life you have to compromise on, like when you have to do podcast ads for things like Doc. No, just kidding. We like Doc. We like it fair enough. We like it as much as everything else. Podcasters trying to get paid. You know how the business works. Sometimes you got to compromise and do ads. Unfortunately, you know what? When it comes to your health, you don't have to compromise. There's no compromise. You don't have to go to one doctor who screws up your appointment and they're trying to do a jigsaw puzzle to put you back together. Instead, you can check out ZocDoc, the place where you find doctors and make it comfortable. I was trying to do the beginning jokey, but it just sounds like I was bitching, but whatever. Maybe if I ZocDoc, I can find out why I'm bitching so much. It says they literally take most insurance, so you don't have to compromise here with ZocDoc. You'll get more options than you know. Let's see. I want to let you know ZocDoc is a free app, and it's a website as well. You can search and compare highly rated in-network doctors near and instantly book the appointments with them online. Once you find the doctor you want, you can book them immediately, no waiting or awkwardly holding online with their receptionist. And the docs are all verified with reviews from actual patients. We're talking about booking appointments with tens of thousands of top-rated, patient-reviewed, credible doctors and specialists. You can filter the ones that take your insurance located near you and find out if there's any conditions that you're searching for. Typical wait time for a doctor booked on ZocDoc is between just 24 to 72 hours. You can score same-day appointments. So if I'm looking for an answer to my bitchiness, whether I got to change my diet or get a shot of B vitamins, or maybe if ZocDoc was around when Elvis was constipated and his daughter died of like similar issues, blockages or something. And I'm thinking back, if you want to get real medieval, if you think about like barbershops that used to do surgeries, you don't have to go to a barbershop anymore because you got ZocDoc. It's on your phone and it's for free. So you can go to ZocDoc.com/spoiler, download the ZocDoc app for free, then find and book the top-rated doctor that you want today. That's ZocDoc.com/spoiler, ZocDoc.com/spoiler. At the end there where they spell it out, it's like, I kind of feel like a DJ or something like ZocDoc, ZocDoc.com. Now back to the podcast already scheduled and running in process in the background, away from all the messages. Let's see. We're back with our favorite bits from the Unnameable and the Unnameable 2. Probably going to get in trouble for an ad that I just did, but I don't care. This is our punk rock year. They don't like the content, sponsor somebody else. That's all I got to say about that. That's like Forrest Gump. That's all I have to say about that. Is that what he says? Yeah, something like that. Favorite bits from the Unnameable and Unnameable 2. Once again, I think you have to watch them both. Although I will say I watched part 2. More familiar with that one. Only watched part 1 a couple of times. Got to think about sequels, man. I just love them. Even though they're considered inferior films all the time in most franchises. Jordan, do you have any favorite bits from one or both of the Unnameable movies?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to think of them as like one movie, but it's like a little bit if you put like Indiana Jones and Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but like a little sultrier, and they, boom, made a movie. So,
wait, what? It feels like an episode of Buffy.
It's like if you took
TV?
Buffy the Vampire Slayer, that TV show, and then you put it with Indiana Jones, that's what this movie would be. And I love that like era of like the effects and the occult mysticism. So but I do like how the second part of the movie goes a little bit more into like these underground tunnels, and like her transformation was super cool.
Oh yeah, because the crypt in the first movie, the crypt is only like teased. We don't really see the underground tombs. And then like it's a fully explored dungeon set in the second movie or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Which I think is kind of cool that they like really keep the first movie into more of this like haunted house, right? That has this like creature lurking into it. And then yes, the second movie.
Yeah, contrary to what George Lucas said, teens in a haunted house, that pretty much works every freaking time.
It does. It works.
So what are you gonna do?
Also, I think the first movie had better kills, in my opinion. Like the gore in it was a little bit more cool,
In which one?
In the first movie.
Well, they're playing on that thing where like everything is suggestive. Like it actually, they don't show the creature until almost the movie's over. And they show you like POV shots, and then like the kills are like, and maybe it's budget constraints, so they got creative. Like they didn't maybe have the budget to do a bunch of crazy on-screen kills. but there is blood effects, right? There's a lot of blood effects, and so
Yeah.
because you hear like the crunching and the sound effects, like your mind's filling in the gap. So maybe because it's scaring you when you're in your imagination and not just on the screen, maybe it's like
Yeah.
one of those deals.
Totally. Yeah. So I liked that about like the first movie and the second movie exploring a little bit more of the crypts. Like, I do love Alita's transformation of when she's going from the creature and they're trying to separate the creature out from her. I do like too how like she's
Oh yeah, spoiler alert. You find out in part 2 that they were messing around with the dark magic and they turned one of the again, it's like if this town was formed by these 4 families or whatever, like, you know, they're like one of the daughters or something is mixed with this bestial energy or whatever that creates the creature, and then whoops, accident, the modern guy's fooling around with the magic splits them into 2 beings, right? Good and bad, sides of the same personality or something.
Well, and I love when she gets separated from her creature body. Like during most of the movie, she's just like covered only by her hair. She refuses to like put on clothes. She hates the jacket every time like the jacket's put on her. I don't know. I think that they did that in a really tasteful way of just having her like long hair cover like, you know, the parts of her body. There's a lot of things that I liked about it. So, Deborah, the police officer, the female police officer. I loved Deborah. She just had this, like, I don't know, very pitbull attitude. Of course, she dies. Spoiler alert, but you know.
One could, I mean, I guess it's debatable whether or not she has the best line in part 2 because she says, like, she says, "Oh, it's a bitch," and cocks the shotgun.
Bitch.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. What about you? What are your favorite bits?
In part 1, I wrote down poetic, classy sex scene followed by a rolling deadhead.
Yes.
So 2 of the teenagers are hooking up, but for some reason it's tasteful.
Oh yeah.
Good music is playing. It's lit well. But like they didn't go full like Skinamax, or they didn't go like Penthouse. They didn't go like Playboy TV. Like they didn't go hardcore. Like it wasn't sleazy.
Totally. Yeah.
Like usually in horror movies, the sex scenes are just sleazy because like they're about to get killed. Right?
Totally.
That's one of the rules. You broke the rule, you're dead. And it's not lit well. They don't take the time. I was like, they took the time here to set up like the romantic vibes. Like, what? Yeah. This is unusual. Like that stood out to me in this movie, straight to video, or like what would just be a sleazy throwaway teens in a haunted house movie. Why did they take so much time to do that so well? You know,
totally.
What I mean? That stands out. And then of course, like the first victim's head rolls in, and you're like, "Oh, perfect." That's just like, you know, like
good timing.
What do you call that? A chef's kiss or something?
Yeah.
It was awesome. And then like you mentioned the female deputy that gets wasted or taken out in the second one, and like that's the library battle is my favorite part of the second one, and the professor cameo, which ties into when I didn't want to spoil something during your Savage Stats, was John Rhys Davis as the professor who knows a little bit of the history. Contrary to the one friend, there's one college kid who just seems to read old books about magic. I don't know. Like, he's the guy that's kind of based on H.P. Lovecraft. Because what's funny about movies that are based on Lovecraft's writing is they always sometimes put Lovecraft in as, like, one of the characters. You know what I mean? Like, there's always a character that's like him or knows his stuff or whatever.
Well, and I think he says in the beginning he comes from, like, the lineage of the warlock or whatever.
They did that classic thing where there's, like, these are the descendants of the people that fucked around with the magic, and they got to deal with it now, right? So that's what I wrote down. Library battle plus the professor cameo. Oh, and also teens in a haunted house. Good for any afternoon movie watching, right? With one exception. We watched a movie, was it like Make Your Own Exorcism or My Friend's Exorcism? Oh, My Best Friend's Exorcism. Going back to maybe last season or something, we did it. We did this. That's teens running around haunted areas because I think they went to a haunted place and that's how they got.
It was like a campground.
Possessed. Yeah. But so there are exceptions. So it can't. But this ratio of teens to a haunted house works in like 80 to 95% of the time. I mean, like this, like. I'm going to bring up Scooby-Doo later in this episode because it goes into a section we call fan service where we talk about are the fans chiming in about anything, and they're chiming in about Scooby-Doo. I'll explain why in a minute. But like Scooby-Doo turned it into like what? 4 TV series, 25 animated movies, 3 live action movies. Like, so clearly Teens in a Haunted House is a genre that works forever. Rate it. We have our own special rating system. Binge now, you got to get to it right away. Binge later, get to it eventually. It's entertaining, but, you know, whatever. Binge never, which is a paradox because it both exists and doesn't exist. Because you've watched the movie, you've experienced it, you may have had a negative reaction, but you still watched it. So it can't truly be a binge never, as Jordan discovered by doing this podcast now for like 2 years, is that it is a paradoxical concept, isn't it? It's like,
I know. Well, we go back
exists.
and forth all the time,
It's like,
depending on the binge over.
yeah. It's like the universe exists, but the universe doesn't exist. Matter exists, but what was before matter? It's like it's a quantum level conundrum. So basically, binge never would just mean don't waste your 2 hours, or you can't get the time back. Stay away from the movie. Again, there are 2 movies, The Unnameable and The Unnameable 2. However, the second one starts where the first one ends, kind of similar to how the Waxworks movies work. But that's why sometimes the movies in its sequel, they feel like just one long drawn out 100%. Story. So I guess you could rate them together or separately if you had. I mean, I don't know. Do you feel differently about them, or are they smashed together?
I'm gonna rate them together, and it was a binge now for me.
That's pretty strong.
Putting Buffy, like I said with Buffy, it was like a Buffy and Indiana Jones had a baby. It would be this movie,
but not a child they acknowledge. I want to make that clear. Yes. I don't think either franchise would acknowledge this is their. That's why they left it unnameable. It's
literally. They're like, no, we don't talk about that one. Yeah. But I think if I would have seen this during that era of nostalgic, that's what I think of nostalgic movie watching, this probably would have been a repeat for me. I would have watched it more than once. So I liked it. It was definitely a fun one. What about you?
So I realized I don't like part 1, and I must have seen part 2 a couple of times because part 2 feels like part 1 to me.
Okay.
And then I must have went back and then just watched part 1 because I was like, how did they end up here with the police checking out the haunted house and people are already dead? Where does this really start? But I would skip part 1. In fact, I didn't think you were going to rate it so highly. I thought you were going to be like, oh, why'd you make me watch this damn thing? I can't remember the title. It's unnameable. But yeah, I like part 2 over. So I would say, binge later part 2 binge later part 1, binge now part 2. So I would maybe separate the ratings. Yeah. But it's fun. I mean, the monster looks cool. I think that's
very cool.
We were talking about this when we covered the Wishmaster movies. Was if your monster looks cool, that's half the battle in a monster movie. I don't care about the characters. That's it's only if there was a negative. You don't care enough about people dying.
I care about Alita. That's it. And a little bit of Carter towards the end. I'm he kind of redeemed himself in part 2, but the rest of them, I agree.
Well, for this, for these filmmakers, they got a second chance to flesh out their story that they were trying to tell, which is a freaking rare case where they get to make a second one and maybe go back and fix the things they didn't get to do in the first one to explain or make you care about the characters or whatever. We mentioned staff picks earlier. I got nothing this week. I just I watched the Last Man on Earth TV show that Will Forte made about the end of the world, which there's 4 seasons and a cliffhanger. It's kind of fun. It gets a little dark and serious, which is really cool. But it ends on a cliffhanger, so you'll never know what happens to these people because the show ends, before you know. So there you go.
I had watched a movie that I had seen be advertised to me a bunch on YouTube.
Oh yeah.
And it was called The Late Night with the Devil, or Late Night with the Devil. So the premise is cool, but the movie just didn't do it for me.
Oh, this is the movie. I mentioned this to you. This was a movie. There was a company promoting this movie, and they tried to give us a screener, and then it kept expiring. And then one of them was a corrupted file, so we didn't watch it. Which is funny because that could be a way to promote a horror movie, is give people a bad file that never works.
What's funny too is because the premise of the show is a late night show, so it's it could kind of fall in line of doing PR in a sense. We've got a haunted link out there where we can't watch it.
It's like if the night show gets possessed or whatever, and then the possession happens on the TV, but it doesn't have a satisfying conclusion. Was my experience when I watched it. So
yeah, I don't know. I kind of wish it would have leaned a little bit more into the occult, or even kind of it could have been cool if it explored more of the backstory of like how he got success in the late night show, which is, like he's involved in some sort of, secret club that allowed him to get his success, but he's obviously paying back for, I guess selling your soul, and so that's why all these bad things are happening to him. And so cool concept, but it just like it felt like, when you get dessert and it just doesn't get that sweet tooth, and you just like feel like not satisfied. That was kind of how I felt after this movie, but it was a fun thing to watch on a Friday. So yeah. What about
There you have
fan
it.
service? You mentioned something about Scooby-Doo.
Oh yeah, back it up. I skipped over fan service. Yeah, I was mentioning Scooby-Doo. So, I mean, someone messaged us on the Facebook page, was going like, "Can you do a watch party of Scooby-Doo?" And my immediate reaction was like, "Probably not." Like, I mean, we used to do watch parties for like we've done some funny commentaries in the past of certain movies on some of the social apps. Like I think we did a commentary for Leprechaun one time. We did a commentary for Friday the 13th Part 8 where Jason goes to New York because it was a Friday the 13th. So we're like, oh, let's kick this commentary out. It's really hard to do that stuff now because like they're really cracking down on copyright material. So it's almost like, oh, guys, press play on your movie at home while you hear us making jokes about it. But however, if you don't sync it up right or, doesn't always work. What I was considering now is finding movies that are outside of public domain rights or whatever, where it doesn't matter and you just watch them. And but then like, Jordan does like the Netflix watch party thing with friends. And it's kind of a gray area if you can record that. I don't think so because
I
there's
don't know if you can.
some movie playing or whatever.
Yeah.
So
You can't even like
will there
screenshot
be
it during it.
I mean, will there be watch parties? Yeah, we'll probably do some again, but I don't have any scheduled. And it's the summertime, man. And like usually during the summer, we do an event called Summer Slash, and we got to get ready for that. And to be honest, we're gonna take a brief hiatus, and we'll be back in a few weeks. And but I got really angry. I got angry yesterday or today. Like, there's a lot of complicated stuff going on behind the scenes, and it affects the show. But like, not because anything that Jordan's doing or that I'm doing. It's just like I was like going to like suggest that I just say like, hey, here's the best of the first 6 years of Summer Slash. And then I thought to myself, like, the show must go on, which I think is like, it's an old theater adage where like on opening night things go wrong, but somehow the team makes the show happen anyway. And like it's like ingrained in me. It's also a song. I mean, like, the show must go on, I think, is Freddie Mercury, if I'm not totally I wasn't prepared to bring it up, but I'm just thinking like, yeah, I think the show must go on is from the opera album of Queen. I think it's on that one. And it is one of those things, and like that's what it is, because something you love is taken away from you, or you can't do it, and there's all these things going on. So then, like, I don't mean anger in like an aggressive bad way. I mean like just the opposition that forces beyond your control are preventing you from doing something that you should be doing or want to be doing, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a lot of heavy shit. We don't usually talk about heavy shit. We're here to
That's
fucking
very
talk about
philosophical.
Yeah. So, but we Jordan and I talked, and we thought like if there was a break to be taken, we should tell like our diehards, our bingers, that what we were up to. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have any more to say.
That was a good note to end it on,
yet
honestly.
on that. I don't want to pressure you, but do you want us to tell them anything, or you just want to, or are we just gonna?
No, life be lifing. Yeah.
What?
I said life be lifing right now.
Life is life.
Yeah.
To be lived.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean, what can I say? I mean, what kind of advice can I give to the audience? Like, man, if you're trying to make something, make it. If you're trying to do something to keep your head above water, keep treading water. Or like, man, it's simple things. I remember the other day, it was like, at that time, it was like my last $2. There was a coffee thing closing inside of a store. I bought a waffle. You know those snack waffles that you can buy in the little packages? I bought a snack waffle and the coffee. I sat there at the table. I watched other humans in the store doing their commerce or whatever, buying their groceries. And I was just like so present. Like they talk about that sometimes, like just be in this little moment and like live here and like don't get beaten down by all these other things. And like if you can just stay there, you know what I mean? Like I was super present with a freaking snack waffle.
Yeah.
And it was just, or it's like, man, if you ever come out of a bad meeting at work or like the job's not going well, it's like one of those things where you stop and like look up and you're just looking at like wind blowing through trees or something.
Yeah.
But like your mind, like you just register, you know, it's probably the same effect of like listening to really good music or like, I don't know what, I don't even know I don't even have the word for the feeling that I'm trying to describe, but it catches you then when you just take a second to like, I guess, meditate or clear your head or something like that. Anyway.
Yeah. Do those things that make you feel grounded, you know?
Right. This is what I recommend. We have released like trivia, we've recorded over 500 episodes and at least 300 of them are still available to listen and peruse or cruise our catalog, buddy. And binge-worthy materials, discover it. You can text us now. I think there's like a way to text us. You can drop us voicemails. I had heavily considered, guys, doing best of messages, but I think I'm just gonna like keep getting out the Unnameable. I mean, it's 2 movies worth. I mean, that'd be really funny if it was like, oh, Summer Slash is 1 episode this year that I just keep re-releasing for 3 months. No. Anyway, I should have already got off the mic. You're right. The perfect ending was when you said that's the best way to end it.
No, I liked that. You know what? You had you had a philosophical moment. You gave some good advice. You know, it's a great way to wrap it up. Give a little bit of context. So
yeah. True diehards will be waiting for your last comment.
I almost like Porky the Pig did. Like,
I don't even know what that means.
That's all, folks. You know.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Do it.
That was it. And he's like,
do it again.
He's like, he stutters way better than me, but when he's like, that's all, folks. But that's kind of how I always feel. Yeah, I don't know.
I can't.
He
kind of
does, yeah. I'll have to listen to it a couple times.
It's like this is your Porky Pig, not the Porky Pig, but your version of Porky Pig.
Yeah.
That's all, folks. See, I can't even do it. I have to say it a different way. I can't stammer the way that he does. But anyway, you get the point.
Yeah.
If you're really listening or watching or paying the attention, you get it. You get it. You get it.
Let's go. I feel like it's like the Legend of Bloody Mary. If you say "let's go" in the mirror 3 times, I might appear behind you or something. I don't know.
Oh crap! I don't know if it heard you say that. Maybe it did. It says because we're in the streaming world and it says end the recording, not yet, or end recording, and I don't know. We'll find out.
Still going.